Okay, so we're reaching the championship rounds of basketball and hockey, and it's June. It's hot. Really, the three of us are feeling like boxers in those championship rounds. Back in the days when it was like a 13th, a 14th, and a 15th round of boxing. Look it up, kids. There was. Anyway, let's get it on. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
Hey, another voice again. I'm Anthony Strait.
Yes. Guys, welcome down to Sports Lines. It's our Saturday morning playoff edition. All right. So Larry O'Brien's beautiful statue, shined it up real nice, is on the line for the NBA. And Lord Stanley's chalice is getting close to being, yes, once and only contractual obligation. But that's getting close to being handed out. We only have 4 suitors left for the NHL's top cup. We'll talk both of that. But we're going to start with the NBA because we need all the time we need to talk about the Rangers and what's going on with them. But let's talk NBA Finals. It's actually the first ever finals that are taking place in San Francisco, the city of giants, and I guess the Golden State Warriors, the best fans since 2015. And they are taking on the Boston Celtics back in the last dance of the NBA season for the first time in 12 years. And yes, that's how long it's been since 2010. 12 years. We're all old. Anyway, the Celtics are up 1-0 in the series as they stole game 1 and home court advantage with a ridiculous fourth quarter, outscoring the Dubs 40-16 in a 120-108 win. Game 2 is Sunday. So the NBA makes their money on the stars. So we're going to talk about stars. Anthony, give me a star for the Eastern Conference champs and the Western Conference champs.
Well, I mean, this is out of the way. Jason Tatum's got to play better. 3 for 17, and your team still managed to win, I think, is probably one of the biggest surprises in game 1. But my attention is going to be on Marcus Smart, and we talked about him in the conference finals a couple of weeks ago, how his absence in game 1 was so vital to the Celtics offense, being stagnant and no ball movement. And when the Celtics are best, it's when Marcus Smart is the ball facilitator and pick and choose when he's the aggressor. You go back to game 7, and by the way, I watched that game on my phone while I was at the Sunday night game between the Phillies and the Mets. So I was kind of split attention between the two. But Miami went on a run, and Marcus Smart inexplicably shot a 3-pointer with the Miami Heat closing the gap and making it a one possession game in the fourth quarter. That's the bad side of Marcus Smart. And game 1, we saw the good side of Marcus Smart. And what makes Marcus Smart good is when he's able to move the ball around and get guys open and play off the combination of Tatum and Jaylen Brown. In game 1, he scored 18 points, but 4 3-pointers. And also in this case, with Marcus Smart, he is going to be the main defender for Steph Curry. We saw Steph Curry go to that great start in game 1. When he was going to him, he held him to 8 points. But Steph Curry went for 21 points in the first quarter. But they did a good job of slowing him down in the second half, held him to 13. Really struggled in the fourth quarter, just 2 assists. But Marcus Smart's got to be a lot better on the defensive end. Maybe play Steph Curry a little closer to the hip, push all those screening rolls. But offensively, he's done a great job in game 1 in particular of at least getting the offense facilitated. Boston's not going to shoot a ton of 3-pointers the way they did game 1.
No.
But still, 7 for 7 to start the fourth quarter is ridiculous. However, they do shoot a high percentage of threes, and that's in part because Al Horford's a great 3-point shooter, always been his whole career. But Marcus Smart, his 3-point shooting has really shown how his game has grown in the last several years, especially since he became the primary point guard. And by the way, the Celtics are actually counting game 1. They're 7-1 in the postseason, and Marcus Smart takes less than 15 shots. So obviously, Marcus Smart, the facilitator, is just as important in this series. Marcus Smart, the defender, when it comes to the combination of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, which leads me to my Golden State Warriors point. Give me a second. Boys still go in and out, but I go from myself to PJ Callisto on a heartbeat. But Klay Thompson is the guy that I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to say Warriors side. Look, it's a great story. He's back in the finals after the 2 years he had dealing with injuries. In fact, his last finals game was Game 6 of 2019 when he tore his ACL. It should have career this season, coming back from the injury, should have career low 3-point percentage. Under 40% for really the first time in his career. The postseason's been up and down. He scored 12 points in one game. And then we've seen a closeout game against Memphis and Dallas, respectively. Game 6, Klay Thompson shows up, and he's pretty much the catalyst for Golden State. He did not shoot the ball well. It was a minus 27 when he was on the floor in the fourth quarter, minus 9 for the game, 15 points, 6 for 14 shooting. And when you watch how that fourth quarter play out, the Warriors got to get something out of anybody besides Steph Curry. Jordan Poole did not play well. He only had 9 points. And Rabbi sent us the beans the ball. Everyone abandoning ship on the
say what
and honestly, Rabbi, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
No, but he hasn't
one bad game in his first NBA Finals appearance against one of the best defenses in the NBA.
He didn't have a good series versus the Mavs either, though, and you have a 3-headed shooting monster. 2 of the 3 need to be correct, especially when Boston plays that way in the fourth quarter.
That right there, you're relying. You're saying that you're giving Poole way too much of a role and a responsibility.
Klay is not Klay, though.
It doesn't matter.
Klay is still not Klay. You have to expect
Klay will be in Game 6 when they need him to be Game 6. Klay is Anthony.
There's still 4 games to go before Game 6.
Fine.
You need to win 2 games to get to a Game 6.
No.
That's what my math told me.
They don't need.
You need to win 2
games. Do that much. They need other guys as well to step up and play their roles. Look, the return of Iguodala is going to help. The return of GP2 is going to help. Not necessarily on the offensive end, but if they play better defense, then you don't have to worry about whether or not Jordan Poole, is on fire or ice cold. And, a better game from Wiggins, being able to do other things with that offense. They will adjust. And honestly, I don't lay too much at the feet of Jordan Poole. This is a kid in his rookie year. He's going to have ups and downs in his first experience in the playoffs. First where he's had any type of real role. It's his first playoff experience, guys.
It doesn't matter if you get to this. If you get to this, there's no pass when you get to here after this. There's no pass.
I would say this though. I can tell. But guys who spent the finals for the first time, the jitters were there. You saw it with Jason Tatum. You saw it in the first quarter with Jaylen Brown a little bit. Jordan Poole definitely had those jitters. But Golden State, they need the Klay Thompson that made a combined 16 threes and 62 points in those closeout wins against Memphis and Dallas. Klay is the guy that's got to give him that secondary scoring with more consistency, because we see Steph Curry get out the hot quarters, but and we talked, and some of the previous shows talked about this early on. Boston's going to try to take Steph Curry away, give him and make him give the ball up more, like they did in the second half of Game 1. Klay Thompson's the guy that can generate his own shots, that can get hot right away, and not have to rely so much on the ball movement that is the Warriors' motion offense. So he's got to be the catalyst, even though it's been a rough 2 years for him, but he's had the playoff experience. He's had the finals experience. He's been there. He's got to be the other splash bubble to pick his game up and elevate it offensively. Because Boston's defense, we've seen all postseason long. Just when we think we're going to count them out, they're just really good. They find ways of getting stops when needed. Ruben Doka has done a great job of keeping his guys accountable. Marcus Smart, part of what I left out, I also left out Marcus Smart, his leadership and the fact that he's almost like a second coach. There's a clip going on, if you go on the NBA YouTube page. Marcus Smart was audio for sound in Game 1. And he's basically telling his guys, we got to play up on step 4. We can't give him any breathing room. And you saw that adjustment happen. Well, they're making Steph settle for twos and drops the basketball. Of course, he's dropping right into Robert Williams also, who looks a lot better than he did in the conference finals in Game 1. So Klay Thompson, his three-point shooting stretches that defense out a little more. But more importantly, if Draymond Green can get something going from the perimeter, that gets Robert Williams away from the basket. basket, and that make things a little easier when you have to slash like Peyton Jr. and Iguodala and even Jordan Poole that can attack the basket a little more. So Klay Thompson has got to be the guy for Golden State to get things going, also to take the pressure off Steph Curry moving forward.
All right, let's move over to Stat Watch. Jay, they say the stats are all about the nerds. Nerds are all about the stats. Not necessarily sure which one it is, but Jay, give me a stat for each team in the semifinals.
We all know that my title is Stat King. Not nerd does not factor into it at all.
Nerd factors into it in the way I write it. I write the script, I get the names.
All right, so for the Warriors, they have a reputation as a team of shooters bombing away from beyond the arc, led by the Splash Brothers, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, as Anthony noted, aided and abetted by the likes of Jordan Poole when he's shooting well, and Andrew Wiggins. But when I was going over the Dubs Western Conference Finals win over Dallas, what stood out to me was just how much they're rebounding, specifically on the offensive boards, leading to second chance points. How large a part that played in them winning that series. They totaled 49 offensive rebounds in that 5-game series. That's a little under 10 per game, 72 second chance points. That's a little over 14 per game. Two of their players, Kevon Looney and Andrew Wiggins, were tied for the most offensive rebounds in the postseason coming into the finals. Each has 42 in the Warriors' first 16 playoff games. That pair has the Warriors averaging 14.5 second chance points per game, an underrated but no less crucial part of what's been a really strong month for the Warriors offense. Looney's rebounding, especially since he was inserted back into the starting lineup against Memphis, has been a huge key to the Warriors' run to the finals. Golden State's the 5th best rebounding team in the postseason in terms of rebounds per game, 44.8, and rebound rate, 52.4%. They averaged 16 second chance points per game in this series win over Memphis, keyed by Looney's 22 rebound performance, 11 on the offensive end in that Game 6 closeout. That created numerous extra possessions for the Warriors. Looney's final offensive rebound of the game became his 5th assist of the night as Klay dropped the 3 that basically sent the Grizzlies home for the summer. Basketball Reference has Looney grabbing 21.6 of the available rebounds when he's on the floor in these playoffs. Look, Boston's a good rebounding team. They rank 7th in rebounds per game, 42.8, and rebound rate, 49.7 among the 16 playoff teams. And they've won the battle of the boards in every one of their series. They showed some vulnerability on the defensive glass against both Milwaukee and Miami, giving up a little under 11 offensive rebounds per game to their opponents, and that vulnerability was on display in Game 1 of the finals. Looney led all players in offensive rebound percentage at 20%. He grabbed half of Golden State's 12 offensive rebounds. Golden State did finish with the edge in offensive rebound rate, plus 5.1, and they had a 26-15 advantage in second chance points. And as late as midway through the third quarter, that advantage was as large as 19-5 in favor of the Dubs. Large part of that was Looney's 6 offensive rebounds. Then Boston closed the gap during that huge fourth quarter comeback. Celtics allowed Golden State only 3 second chance points in the fourth quarter after giving up 23 in the first 36 minutes. Looney played a big part in that as well, as the Warriors center was only on the floor for 3 of the final 12 minutes, as Golden State was struggling to match up with Boston's small ball lineups. Look, we know that Boston's comeback win on the road in Game 1 was due to some ridiculous three-point shooting, largely aided by some horrible perimeter defense by Golden State. So if the Warriors can do a better job, hell, and even an NBA average job of defending the 3 in Game 2, and are able to keep Looney on the floor for more than 3 minutes in the fourth, they're in their ability to get on the offensive glass, get those extra possessions that lead to those crucial second chance points, they'll head to Beantown with at least a split. And if they keep that streak of winning at least one road game in the playoff series alive, we'll have ourselves a series. For the Celtics, this is all about turnovers and assists and turnovers, specifically by Tatum and Brown. And it may be overly simplistic, but those turnovers, specifically by Brown and Tatum, their 2 stars, have been the Celtics' Achilles heel in these playoffs, and the numbers don't lie. Jason Tatum, coming into the finals, had 77 turnovers in 18 playoff games. That's an average of 4.3 per game and 18 more than the next closest player. Brown is coughing the ball up an average of 3 times per game. Look, we know how talented Boston's wings are. Anthony alluded to it in his segment, but they can be mistake prone. And when the guys who are options 1A and 1B on offense are averaging over 7 turnovers a game, it's a cause for concern. In their 12 wins in the playoffs this season, Celtics have turned the ball over 12.8 times per game. In their 6 losses, all in their last 2 series, that number jumps up to 16.3 turnovers per game. That creates more open court transition possessions for their opponents. And we all know it's much easier to beat Boston when you don't have to constantly work against that elite half-court defense. In those 6 losses, Boston's opponents averaged 22 points per game off Celtic turnovers. We talk about assist to turnover ratio, assists on made baskets, points over off turnovers as markers for success. Boston was all about that in game 1. Here are the numbers. Tatum, as Anthony alluded, had one of his worst shooting performances of his career. 12 points, 3 of 17 from the floor, 1 of 5 from downtown. At 17.6% field goal percentage. His lowest mark in any playoff game where he attempted at least 10 shots. But the Celtics won because Tatum led all players in assist percentage, dropping dimes on 37.1% of Boston's made field goals when he was on the court. Tatum also had the best assist to turnover ratio at 6.5 to 1, only 2 turnovers against 13 assists. Brown had 5 assists, but his 4 turnovers are the most of any Celtic on the team. They had 12 overall. So that's an area he needs to still keep improving on. Boston's 33 assists were their highest of any game in this year's playoff. Combined regular season and playoffs, Boston is 7-1 when dishing out 33 plus assists. Tatum's 13 were the most by a player making his finals debut, surpassing the likes of John Stockton, Michael Jordan, and Isaiah Thomas, who each dropped 12 in their finals debut. Boston finished with a decisive 21-10 edge in points off turnovers, taking advantage of the 14 mistakes that Golden State made in game 1. So if Boston can continue to take care of the ball and win the points off turnover battle, then even if their 3-point shooting cools off, and the law of averages dictates there's a good chance it will, just like it dictates that Tatum is unlikely to continue shooting 17.6% from the floor, they'll have a chance to add banner number 18 to the Garden Rafters.
One thing, I'm going to defend a couple of points that you guys made, which are completely very slanderous. Number 1, Tatum didn't have a great shooting game, but he had the most assists in a finals debut in almost for any Celtic of all time, and I think in almost 30 years, which is insanity. Yep. Number 2, here's some expert analysis from watching these playoffs. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't dribble. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't dribble. I've never seen a team fail at that fundamental so easily as that team. If you make them dribble, you have a chance to beat them every single time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Boston's offense is not predicated on those 2 guys playing too much ISO ball. When you need them to, yeah, but
any ISO ball, honestly.
We all know that it's going to come down to that every once in a while when they need a bucket, and those are the 2 guys they rely on to get them buckets. But we talked about this previously. Boston is better served when the ball moves around the floor, and we saw the difference when Smart and Horford were out versus when they came back. The ball just moved, and Brown and Tatum got better looks. You're right. Yeah. If they do all what they did, just dribbling, they're not going to get good looks. It makes it easier for the Warriors to defend them.
And it was easier to do it in the series versus the Heat because the Heat don't really have as much of a transition offense and end those scorers. And one more thing, Looney's going to have a hard time seeing the floor this series just because the matchups don't warrant it. And if you do have a big lineup, you could just plug in any Williams of your choice to go up against him at that spot. Okay, quickly. So my X factor for the Celtics, it would have been Al Horford, but for God's sakes, Al Horford is now a star in these finals to the point where I think he's probably having the best playoffs of his entire career. Imagine somebody who is essentially a throw-in back to get rid of Kemba Walker last season to the Thunder, and how that team how Horford's basically the catalyst of this team as a veteran leader. And basically whenever Tatum and Brown are off, he can be the leaders in the scoring department. And he's basically their Draymond Green stats sheet stuffer when you would really, really like him to be. Mm-hmm. But he's too much of a star. My X factor for this series after game 1 is Derek White. Yes, Derek White coming in from the San Antonio Spurs and the real 8th rotation player to really have his big game in these playoffs. Everybody can go for 20 plus now if they have a great game. I mean, that makes it obvious, but everyone's potential is high. And he came off the bench, had 5 3-pointers, went 5 for 8, and had some amazing 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. You were talking about how bad the perimeter defense was, Jay. There was actually a play where Curry probably played some of the best perimeter defense I've ever seen him play. closed out, got faked out, but closed out again, and still White made a three-pointer right in front of his face. White became the first Celtic player to be a 20-plus point mark player as a reserve for the first time since Leon Poe. Yes, kids. Memory.
Wow, Leon
2008. He was only a 20 game scorer. Did that in that game. So that's how Boston is going to win this series. Again, a guy who is part of a very good culture in San Antonio with Greg Popovich is doing the same for Ime Udoka, who is really impressing me as a coach this postseason, by the way.
Impressed me as well.
Especially with his in-game adjustments. Imagine if the Nets had someone like him. Anyway, Golden State, I'm going to have to go with Andrew Wiggins. I think just because of the fact that he is a scorer. He actually did very well in game one. His defense, though, was pretty bad. He did go for 20 points. He did have 5 rebounds. That's pretty close to what he's been averaging this postseason. He's actually been averaging a little less than that. It was 15 and I think 6 on that, but needs to play a lot better defensively because you're going
minus
to
11.
To be fair, though, everybody in a loss has a minus.
But
you have to really look at the largest.
That was the largest minus of in the plus minus department for.
You have to look at what everybody does at that fourth quarter.
Well,
you have to look at what the game is. I'm sure it wasn't
because
it lost by 12
5.
The starting 5 he was, but
Porter were like minus 19, minus 18.
Well, was minus 19. Otto Porter Jr. was minus 18. Everybody else, the starting lineup was single digits. Ironically enough, Draymond had a terrible game and he was only minus 1. But I digress. This is going to be I feel like this is going to be a very long series. Wiggins is going to need to do it on both ends of the court because, to be honest, he is probably their baseline consistently offensively. You're getting 15 points from him almost every single night. It's just a question of can he do it on both sides of the ball? And I'm not 100%, and I'm pretty sure that he can. And it's also a question of how many minutes can you keep him on the floor to be able to rest everyone else? Because again, you know what you're getting from Andrew Wiggins. You may not know what you're getting from the rest of the starting lineup outside of stuff.
Well, I tell you, Rabbi, and the amount of minutes they need to keep him on the floor, I think it's going to be more about who he has to guard than, the offense they need to get out of him, which is why, the return from injury of Otto Porter and Gary Payton too is crucial for the Warriors in being able to defend the guys on the perimeter, to defend Smart, to defend Brown, to defend Tatum, and the other shooters. Wiggins needs the help on defense. So, and if he gets that, then I think maybe his offense will he'll be able to actually focus a little more on his offense and contribute that way. And you're right, it's going to be key for Golden State.
I definitely it's going at least 6 because this is it's a matchup of strength on strength. I mean, you think about the Warriors' high power offense and the Celtics, very starch defense, and it's just a matter of which one wins out. And game one, we saw Boston kind of show that they can light it up too. They out Golden State, the Golden State Warriors, which almost never happens. So they're so used to the Warriors going on these 16, 17-0 runs and turning a close game into a rout. In this case, they got to taste their own medicine. And one of the things I can sum up the Warriors is that, and listen to their post-game presses, it was one game. But sometimes they'll realize they're in a dogfight of a series until they're actually in a dogfight of a series. And I don't know if it's dawned on them just yet how serious Boston is.
Oh, I have. I think it has.
They're going to have to, I think it has, it's one game. We'll try to get the split. I don't like that attitude. It's like, look, I sound the urgency now because, man, we see how Boston can be kind of in and out in that conference final series against Miami, but that's different series. We also saw how dominant Golden State could be against Dallas. 2 totally different teams are not playing anymore. So now it's like, okay, we know. So it's like Golden State. It's like, hey, look, you just sound alarm now because if you're taking this team a little too lightly, you're going to be down 0-2 before you know it. And for the Celtics, y'all got the better starts because clearly, these slow starts and putting yourself in a hole early on. Against Golden State, it's not a good combination. I mean,
it's going to be very interesting just to see how this series kind of goes in game 2, because this could be a kitchen sink game this should be a kitchen sink game for the Warriors. And we know Tatum doesn't have 2 bad offensive games in a row scoring wise. So he is going to have something to say on Sunday. All right. Hey. Who says we're biased on this show? Actually, I do. We are a New York show. Anyway, the New York Rangers, as Anthony forgot to actually get his stuff until right now, are back in the Final Four of the NHL, also known as the Conference Finals, whatever, for the first time in 7 years. Still too weird to say 2015. It's still too weird to say that. That's a long time ago. Anyway, they are taking on a team who has been to the Final Four all but 2 times since that 2015 season where the Rangers lost, by the way, to the Lightning. They're talking, of course, we're talking about the back-to-back champs, the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team who had never lost back-to-back postseason games in their 2 Stanley Cup seasons, 18 opportunities to have a second loss. And then last night they did just that. So game 1, 6-2 win. It was 2-2, and then the Rangers just dominated. And then last night, 3-2 win in game number 2, including the most heart-stopping last 3 minutes of my entire life, I think, watching the Rangers in the last 6-7 years. I hate the fact that people now take the goalie out with 3 minutes to go. It's a great strategy. I just freaking hate it myself. The Rangers, after a week that saw them eliminate the Hurricanes in dominant fashion in 2 games, and then put the Lightning on quick notice, they're just 2 wins away from being the Eastern Conference champs and being and Gerard Gallant being the 3rd consecutive Ranger. Fun stat that I didn't realize: if Gerard Gallant makes the Stanley Cup Finals, all 3 Ranger Stanley Cup Finals since 1994 will have all gone to first teams who were head coaches for the first year.
I
didn't realize that until I realized that Vigneault did that with his first year.
Yeah, Vigneault and Mike Keenan.
Yes, Mike Keenan in the best 1-year run that anyone's ever had. All right, so let's analyze. Jay, you have the pick of the litter, but what have you seen in the first 2 games in Manhattan that need to continue in sunny / tropical storm range Tampa?
Look, Igor Shesterkin's play and goal would be the captain obvious choice here. I mean, he's allowed 4 goals on a total of 70 shots. It's a .943 save percentage and a 2 flat goals against average. But coming into this series against the back-to-back defending champs, the Rangers knew that their stars would have to play like stars in order to even attempt to match the stars that the Lightning have on their side of the rink. And that starts with the play of the Rangers' number 1 line, which means it starts with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. And after that, you're looking at, Artemi Panarin and Adam Fox. And so far, the Blue Shirts' big 4 off to a great start in this series. Zibanejad had a goal off the power play and an assist in game 1. Panarin also had a goal and assist. Fox had a pair of assists, and Kreider's goal 1 minute and 11 seconds into the game gave the Rangers the lead, and they never looked back, winning game 1 6-2, as you said, Rabbi. Zibanejad scored his second goal of the series a minute 21 into the 3rd period of game 2 on a nice wrister from outside the left circle, put the Rangers up 3-1, and they would win 3-2 and sweep both games at MSG. Fox and Kreider each had 2 assists. Zibanejad and Kreider now each have 9 goals during the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's tied for 3rd overall. Fox now leads all blue liners in points this postseason with 22, 5 goals, 17 assists, and he's tied for 3rd overall in playoff scoring with Zibanejad. Yeah, the goalie matchup was the front page bold type headline coming into this series for obvious reasons, and it still may be the deciding factor if Andrei Vasilevskiy returns to form with the series shifting to Tampa Bay. But the Rangers' big 4 have been on an uptick since game 5 against Carolina, when the Rangers put up 11 goals over the last 2 games to come from behind and win that series. Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, and Fox accounted for 5 of those goals and tallied 8 assists. If the Rangers stars can keep that level of scoring and playmaking on the road in this series, and they continue to get an assist in production from the kid line of Alexis Frenieri, Capo Caco, and Filipino. I see you, man. He's got 2 goals already in this series. And they did manage to do that against a team that, as you noted, Rabbi, had previously won 18 straight playoff games after loss. Then they have a chance to deny the Lightning the 3-peat that they're seeking.
All right, Anthony. You have a lot lesser of a choice, but One negative in the first two games at MSG. There have been some things that have worried me as well, but what negative do you see that the Rangers need to fix?
Well, you'll probably be able to tack on to this, but coming into this, I feel like I was worried that the Rangers played a little too much time in their own side of the rink, and then the defense zone. They just playing too much on their heels. We saw in the first two rounds of the playoffs, the Rangers gave up a lot of great scoring opportunities to the opposing team, whether it be just not being able to get the puck out of the zone to allow for a line change, or just turn the puck over inexplicably on a bad pass in the middle of the ice. But it's an interesting stat too, because I feel like the last 4 games, the Rangers have probably played their 4 best games of the season by far. It's like kind of they've been able to piece it together between Game 6 against Carolina, and of course the first 2 games in the Tampa series. You think about the Game 5, and excuse me, and I felt like puck possession was such a big deal for the Rangers in particular, because every game they say they've been outshot. I mean, it's like the Rangers, they don't shoot a lot, they get a lot of high quality opportunities, they're just not getting enough shots on. With Andre Vasilevskiy, you gotta get shots on that. You cannot play around, look for the fancy pass and the slot. But it's an interesting day too. Defensively, the Rangers have tightened up. Jacob Trouba, Ryan Lindgren playing through God knows how many injuries. It's been amazing.
Trouba's blocked 34 shots, by the way, these playoffs in just 18 games.
And then you got like this, the Rangers, and just an interesting stat, the Rangers have been credited for 435 hits coming into the series in 14 games. And they also lead all the penalties in blocked shots. So the fact that they were able to prove so much from round 1 to now has been incredible. And then you look at the first 2 games of the series, where even though on paper Tampa Bay has gotten a few more shots, the shot differential has been a lot closer. Game 1 was 31-27. Game 2 was 31-28. and in this case, we saw in Game 2, the Rangers dominated really for the first 2 periods of that game, particularly in the second period, where they was able to get every shot they possibly can off Vasilevskiy. Vasilevskiy just played amazing in that second period to keep Tampa in that game. And what worries me going into when the series took to Tampa is, can the Rangers keep that momentum going as far as possession of puck, being able to get more shots on that, and being able to get the puck out of the zone. Because look, for what it's worth, Brayden Point not being available the first 2 games really helped the Lightning's offense. I think it's pretty noticeable when you see that the offense have a hard time getting the puck movement and getting shots on that. But I think back to Game 5 against Carolina, where the Rangers threw 2.5 periods where they had 11 shots on that. And that's something that the Rangers really have to concern themselves with, especially with being on the road, because Tampa is such a good home team. Amalie Arena's going to be buzzing tomorrow afternoon. The Rangers going to have to keep the momentum going. They're going to have to continue to possess the puck more, keep the puck on the offensive end of the ice as much as possible. But also, the players they do a great job of chipping pucks, blocking shots, getting the puck out as soon as possible. Also, clearing out traffic in front of Igor Shesterkin, who's been phenomenal so far for the first 2 games. I got the stat right here. His save percentage is close to 91% for the first 2 games in the series, and he's just getting help in front of him a lot more than we saw in Pittsburgh in the first 5 games against Carolina. So I think the Rangers really do have to keep it up. The defenseman and everything has been going very well. And we've seen this before in the playoff series, in the playoff run. I think about St. Louis. I think about some of these teams that just got hot at the right time. Everything came together. The question going to be for the Rangers, can they keep this going? Go on a roll against a team like Tampa Bay with the championship pedigree and a home ice advantage for the next 2 rounds.
Let me kind of top a cap on your point, starting with you, Anthony. One thing that you didn't mention that I'm a little worried that I would worry a little bit about. They did score on the power play in Game 1, but that was the goal that made it 6-2. They broke their power play streak last night of scoring a goal in 7 consecutive games. I'm a little worried about that if I would be the Rangers. The Lightning basically gave were very undisciplined last night. They just got lucky and did not let up a power play goal. Rangers had 7 shots on the power play last night, but I feel like I saw a lot more of that. Let me get that perfect angle power play that they've done for so many playoffs in the past. I mean, again, this might be just Ranger flashbacks of going back in my foxhole and realizing that the power play is coming back into where the power play usually is. But that would be a small concern for me, because eventually when you get to Tampa Bay, you're not going to get the same calls. And Ryan Reeves is going into the penalty box at some point during game number 3. I think that's almost a guarantee. Now, I'm going to go back to the kid line before I mention this, and this will lead into Andrei Vasilevskiy, because I want to talk about him for a second. 23 points this postseason for the kid line. Lafreniere, 2 goals, 7 assists. Hedl now with 7 goals and 1 assist, and Kakko scoring last night 2 goals and 3 assists. The one thing that Anthony mentioned about the Rangers not having possession during a lot of this series is, although they almost won the shots on goal, which is almost rare this postseason, the Lightning had to do some work at the end of the game for that. But if you look, it did. But if you look at that game 1, where I believe Hedl ended up with the goal, I don't remember who ended up. The Rangers kid line had a shift that went about 1:30, where they just continued to possess the puck, got the puck back, continued to possess the puck, and it eventually turned into a goal. It's been called the shift by a lot of people on the internet, because it was as hardworking of a shift that you'll ever see from 3 kids who, Lafreniere, Kakko, and Hedl had a lot of potential going into these playoffs. That's why they're not in the first line and the fourth line. And they have just stunned into the point where they are about as good as any line out there. You don't want to break this lineup right now. They've gotten too much momentum. And that kid line is the reason why Andrei Vasilevskiy, the Tampa Bay goalie who has been the best postseason player for this team in their last 3 years, is starting to kind of get a little wary. Now, game 1, he gave up 6 goals, and everyone mentions the fact was he only gave up 3 goals in the Florida series. And yes, it's a combination of what the Rangers did, which I'll talk about in a second, and a combination of, you're a goalie who hasn't played in 9 days. Remember, they beat Florida the last Monday to finish up that series. You're going to go through an adjustment period. Now, this was a hell of an adjustment period going up against a team that's just as fast as the team that you just played, but younger. And that's one of the reasons why Vasilevskiy has looked a little scared. But last night, you kind of saw it when Keandre Miller scored to basically top what was the, I believe, Kucherov goal earlier in that first period. He basically had a shot that you could easily stop, but because Brandon Hagel stopped Miller's initial shot, the puck kicked back to Miller, and Vasilevskiy still couldn't get the rebound because it beat him under the glove. Then Zibanejad scored in the third period, 5th of 9 goals that the Rangers have scored in this series that was scored on the blocker side. One thing I've realized when you watch hockey is goalies can do as much as they can, but if they can't see the puck that the blocker, guess what? You could be the best goalie in the world, it's still going in. He did stop all 14 shots in the second period, but the Lightning defense has been outplayed by the Ranger defense. Too many second chances. Shesterkin has been the better goalie so far in this series, but as I mentioned to Anthony, Shesterkin hasn't had to do too much. This is almost like a vacation as it was opposed to the Pittsburgh series. You can almost I'm not saying you can lay out on a hammock, but this has been the best. When Shesterkin is allowed to play his game, guys, this is the results. And couple that with the Rangers offense, it's been a pretty damn good 2 games right now. And yes, stuff changes when the other team has the last chance to match up with your line, but the Rangers get one of these next two, which is highly possible. They're going to go in with 3 chances to clinch and 2 at home. And the Rangers haven't lost a game at in regulation at home this postseason. They've won 8 straight. Igor Shesterkin is 1 away from tying the record for most home playoff consecutive wins by a goalie, held by the great Marc-Andre Fleury. What can I say? If you're a Ranger fan, this is way beyond my expectations, cynic that I am and all, but this could be a very interesting next few weeks for the New York
I would say this too. I 2 days. Barclay Goodrow being back in the lineup has been you see the Rangers defense got a lot better because he's been great defensive. But also with Tampa Bay, I don't know if they get confidence. Igor Shesterkin is an offensive weapon because of his ability to pass when he possesses the puck away from the net. And Tampa's got, and I know we'll talk from the Rangers standpoint, but this is something for Tampa Bay as well that I think they really got to take into consideration. Igor Shesterkin is such a good passer. We saw this in the Pittsburgh Steelers and even a little bit against Carolina, that he catches a team in a line change off guard and he starts a odd man rush almost immediately because of his ability to stop the puck but get it out immediately. And it reminded me of one of my all-time favorite crushes in the world, Hope Solo, where she played for Team USA and how she would make a save for Team USA, but she would get the ball up the field almost immediately and start an odd man attack where you would have the likes of Chloe Lloyd and Alice Morgan kind of make that attack. And when you see the Rangers, I know, look, I speak in analogies. I'm using 2 different.
I know where he's going.
He's getting the idea.
I know
where your goalie can be another offensive weapon as far as being a playmaker. That changes the dynamic of how you have to guard against a particular team, particularly when you are on a line change. And in the second period in particular, when you have the ball line change, it becomes even greater of importance, I think, back to the Pittsburgh Steelers when the Rangers stormed back in that game 6. It was in the second period where we were still getting caught the Penguins in a line change, and it started 2-on-1 between Kreider and Zibanejad, and that led to a goal. The Rangers, I think they see that they want to have just still get handle the puck a little bit when it comes to these line changes and be able to take that stretch pass up the ice. That's something that Tampa Bay really have to take into consideration because the Rangers can certainly have a balanced offensive attack. I don't think anyone saw Foreman going into the postseason because it's such a top-heavy roster with a lot of offensive stars. But their ability to get balanced scoring from virtually everywhere, but playmaking, even with the goaltending, I think it's really caught them like hit off guard. That's something they didn't see in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They definitely didn't see it against Florida in round 2. And it's really something that has to shift to Tampa that you wonder how they're going to make the adjustments.
I do, Anthony, wonder, though, when you play a team like Florida and do what they did to Florida, who was the top offensive scoring team in the league and one of the best all time in the regular season, what your confidence level is when you play a team like the Rangers, who were on the same level, but holy Jesus, my God.
And guys, I'll leave you with this, and it's a familiar quote, and Rabbi's used it himself. Look, Tampa Bay may be down 0-2. They're going home. When you've gone through back-to-back like this, they're not really that phased. As Rudy Tomjanovich used to say, never underestimate the heart of a champion.
I agree with you, but I do think if you were to picture how a series would start for the Rangers, this is about as good as it could be. All right. We got to move on, because when the Rangers make the Stanley Cup Finals, we need to examine the potential opponents as the Western Conference Finals. The Edmonton Oilers, I'm just kidding. The Edmonton Oilers and Colorado Avalanche had their other world stars, Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. And yes, both would be very, very good Irish pubs to go to. They're fighting to see who the true Highlander of the West is. There can be only one. After 12 goals in the first two games by the Avalanche, the Avs are already halfway there, up 2-0 as they show their real passports crossing the border. And if you don't have one, I know Evander Kane can fake one for you at any possible time he wants to, just like he fakes vaccine cards. All right, guys, let's talk for the rest of the series. Jay, who are you watching for on the Avalanche?
Honestly, what stood out for me so far has been the production of the Avs' second line of Nazem Kadri centering Mikko Rantanen and Arturi Lehkonen. The trios combined for 37 points on 14 goals and 23 assists so far in the playoffs, and they've been a huge part of why Colorado is up 2-0. They combined for two of the Avs' 8 goals, Kadri on the power play and Rantanen at even strength, and added 2 assists in the 8-6 Game 1 shootout victory. The 4-0 shutout win in Game 2 was the number 2 line's showcase. Goals by Lehkonen and Rantanen, and Kadri getting the primary assist on the first 3 Colorado goals, all in the second period and all in a span of about 2 minutes, with the first 2 goals coming on consecutive shots within 15 seconds of each other. Kadri individually has impressed me so far during these playoffs, but never more so than in Game 2. Along with those 3 primary assists, he personally generated 8 shot attempts in all situations, 7 of which were scoring chances. His game score of 4.89 led the team, and that was his second best of the playoffs. With him on the ice, Colorado outshot Edmonton 16-7 and generated 89.2% of the expected goal share, holding the Oilers to just 2 scoring chances while generating 13 of their own. Those 3 assists by Kadri tied the Avalanche/Quebec Nordiques franchise record for most assists in a playoff period. Quebec defenseman Risto Siltanen in Game 5 of the 87 division semis, and Colorado center Joe Sakic, who's now the team's GM, in Game 2 of the 96 Stanley Cup Finals. Kadri came into the Western Conference Finals with 10 points, 5 goals, 5 assists in 10 Stanley Cup playoff games after a career-high 87-point regular season, 28 goals, 59 assists. He's averaging 19 minutes of ice time per game in the playoffs, including 318 on the power play, and he's won 50% of his faceoffs. Got his first playoff hat trick in the Avs' 6-3 win over the St. Louis Blues in Game 4 of the second-round series. His ability to play at this level and the production the number 2 line is putting up is key, with defenses focused, rightfully so, on the number 1 line of Nathan MacKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, and Valeri Nichushkin, and is going to cause a lot of problems for the Oilers as they attempt to right the ship as the series shifts to Edmonton. The Lehkonen, Kadri, Rantanen line had 86% of the expected goal share at 5-on-5 in Game 2, according to Natural Stat Trick, which led all Avalanche line combinations that played more than 6 minutes together. They generated 10 scoring chances together, by far the most on the team, allowing only those 2. I don't think Colorado expects to get that level of performance every game from their second line, but if Lehkonen, Kadri, and Rantanen are anywhere close to that, what we saw in Game 2 going forward, and the number 1 line keeps doing their thing, I don't see how the Oilers get back into this series, guys.
Why the hell not expected from that second line? That Avalanche team has been one of the best teams farming offense for years and years now, and they're very close to realizing their potential and getting to their first Stanley Cup since 2002. Jesus, y'all. All right, Anthony. The Oilers are an all-star team, let's be fair. But what have they done in these first 2 games that worries you?
Well, in Game 1, let's be honest, defense was optional in Game 1. I mean, it was video game level.
Optional? It was God in Game 1.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, you had one goalie leave the game because of injury. Another goalie out cold. It was video game levels. It was insane. But this is Edmonton's style. And I thought in Game 2, they try to be more physical. They try to make the game ugly from the very go. But they've been a really bad defensive, undisciplined team for the first 2 games. They took a lot of really bad penalties. Defensively, you wonder what teams are going to actually figure out who will play defense. Even Mike Rescue on the TNT postgame said, you know what, I'm one of the greatest offensive players in the world. Even I had to figure out some point how to play defense. Colorado got their assignment. And as far as a point at this shutout win, Kaplan Van Coos, who filled in for Darcy Kemper, who left the Game 1 for the injury, 24 saves. But here's the thing, too. I think Edmonton, they look outmatched more in Game 2. They try to be more physical. They try to be more defense-oriented. They try to kind of be agitators and kind of muck things up. And it didn't work because Colorado scored 3 goals, winning a minute of 120 24 seconds.
Yep.
In that time span in the second period, and then like Edmonton never recovered. And one of the things that Coach Jay Woodcroft did was he split up Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And put them on separate lines, kind of balance out the scoring, and really, I think it really kind of took away from Edmonton's offense a little bit in the second game. So I expect him to put those back together. But game 3 going with the series shifting to Edmonton. Edmonton, they were in game 1. They fell behind 7-3 and made it a one-goal game before they gave up an empty netter. So we know what Edmonton's strength is, and we saw this in the Calgary series, and we saw this in round 1 against in the first round. They're an offensive machine, and when they're top line with David and Kane and company, when they get going, Edmonton just steamroll. But the goalie's got about Smith. He's got to be better. I mean, he gave up the 4 goals. He was phenomenal in the first period, stopping a lot of great scoring opportunities that Colorado was able to generate. Also, in Edmonton, they gave up a ton of odd-man rushes. I mean, 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s. You name it. And the reason why it was only 4-0 and not 9-0 because Smith was so good in that. And look, the series moving, maybe the home ice advantage and the home crowd give Edmonton a little bit of life, but they gotta be better defensively. I think that's the main thing. We know they can score goals. It's just always been a question: can they stop them? And right now, Colorado has just literally just been running circles. By the way, Nate McKinnon he could be all the way the fastest skater.
Nathan McKinnon, Anthony. Nathan McKinnon is essentially a creative skater.
Like it has been.
If you saw.
He's the 99 rated as far as skating speed.
He's the creative skater. I'm sure, Anthony, I'm sure people have seen the game 5 goal where he literally went from one corner of the ice to the other corner of the ice and scored. That's what you get with Nathan McKinnon. All right. I'm going to quickly mention my storyline for this series, and Ranger fans should know this very well. It's about backup goalies. Now, the Oilers' Mike Smith has been the starting goalie for the Oilers this whole entire postseason, but as mentioned in this series, as mentioned of the Calgary series, where he looked lost at times, and the Kings series, where he also looked lost at times. Remember, they went to 7 with LA. They only went 5 with Calgary. Mike Smith is an experience, so to speak. You know what you're going to get some good stuff from him, but he's been pulled into game 1 twice. He's had a lot of times where the defense can be as bad, but Mike Smith, you need to still be better. You need to be the .915 save percentage guy that you've been in these playoffs. He got pulled in game 1 for Mikko Koskinen, and then again had a pretty bad game in game number 2, letting up 4 goals. This might be this just might not be the series for him. They might need to mix up goalies, so to speak. They need a spark. And sometimes Smith has been good. Smith has been serviceable. You can have a serviceable goalie in this day and age in goal, but you need to sometimes, when you're facing an elite team, have a goalie that's better than that. So Smith needs to play up to his potential. Anthony, real quick.
Yeah, I'll say this too. When you're playing with a team with as much speed as Colorado, you probably want to go with a goalie who has a quicker glove and can be able to kind of move a little more lateral from left to right. I don't think Smith can do that right now. I think he's just been between the Calgary series and even this one. Even the 7 game against the Kings. He's been under siege a lot, and his defense is not helping.
And Anthony, it's way too much talent, especially even more than Calgary. Quickly, for the Avalanche, Darcy Kemper got injured in that game 1, forced Pavel Francois to be in the net. He does have 4 playoff wins this series. He is still pretty old. He is 32, which is old in hockey years, but had a shutout in game number 2. Answered the call. It was his first career playoff shutout. He definitely showed that he can play bigger than his 6'3" stature. He was one of the shortest goalies in the league. But I'm sorry, he's 6 foot. 6'3" is actually the average height of a goalie. He can play big in some spots, and if Darcy Kempler is still injured, he might be the guy who you have to go to the rest of the way. I'm very interested to see what the goalie matchup is going to be going forward. Will we have more 8-6 games like we did in game number 1? Edmonton is always a place where we've had some very interesting goalie shootouts in this postseason. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another one. All right. I think we're done. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steve Rabinowitz. Thank you for joining us for this abbreviated edition at an hour of On the Sports Lines. We are online live at facebook.com/On the Sports Lines every week. We are on demand at youtube.com/On the Sports Lines. And
you can find us on Twitter at ONTH Sports Lines, where you'll see links to this show and other interesting items of note in sports that we think are worth your while to check out.
Online, and that's all. So enjoy your good June days and nights on Saturday. Shout out to my wife Randy, who unfortunately right now is in Miami in the middle of basically the middle of what is the first tropical storm of 2022.
Be safe, Randy.
Be safe. And guys, we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
On the sport. Good afternoon, good morning from
Good afternoon, good morning, and good night.
Technically, yes, all three.
Good night, Canada.
Good night, Canada.